This is the Bruchim podcast, the only podcast in the world dedicated to Jews who think differently about circumcision. Previously on the Bruchim podcast. We had an email come into Bruchim not too long ago, and we get all of these sorts of, people contacting us. And this was a mother who had converted. The kids were circumcised already, so they did what's called a hatafat brit. So this actual case happened. And what ended up happening is that little boy who had this hatafat brit ceremony done on him when he was 8 years old grew up to be a man who felt that he had been sexually assaulted and wants nothing to do with Judaism right now. Welcome back to the Bruchim podcast. I'm your host, Eliyahu Ungar-Sargon, and joining me today from New Haven, Connecticut is Bruchim's Director of Education and my co-host, Max Duboff. Max, I am super excited for our episode today. How about you?
Yes, definitely. I mean, all our episodes are really special, but particularly excited to be talking with our guests today.
And I want to note that for avid listeners of the Bruchim podcast, you will expect me to give you an introduction to our esteemed guests based on place and name. But today we're going to be doing things a little differently, right, Max?
Yeah, definitely. So our guest today will be anonymous, and, definitely we're going to be talking about some sensitive personal details here. So our guest today, they're a father and daughter who are from the Midwest. They're a Jewish family. And that's about all we'll say. And I also just want to give a quick note about, some of what we think is the importance of telling personal stories. So one of the things we really hope to do is really talk about some of the lived experiences as well of the practices that we're talking about, and not only how it affects individuals who undergo them, but also their loved ones, as will really come out in our episode today. And we hope that our discussion of some of these personal experiences in this episode and elsewhere in this season will really help to inform and even sort of provide constraints on some of our more theoretical discussion.
So in order to respect the anonymity of our esteemed guests this episode, we will be referring to them as F and G. They are father and daughter, as Max mentioned. And I just want to say that it will become very clear very soon why they have chosen to remain anonymous as they tell their story. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our very special guests, F and G. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for agreeing to speak with us today. It's a real honor.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So I was wondering if we could start by sort of setting the stage with the facts of your story. F, if we could start at the beginning, and if you can just sort of give us the background. You married a non-Jewish woman, is that right?
That is correct. I was from a not very observant family at all. Basically, my knowledge of Jewish practice was near zero until my wife converted, and she became kind of the spiritual leader of our family.
So you grew up in a kind of nominal Jewish background, is that right?
Right. I was bar mitzvahed. Back in those days, they didn't do daughters, so my sisters were not, and my brother was, but that was in the 60s.
And can you tell us, F, a little bit about your wife and her religious background and how that shifted over time?
She was brought up a Christian Scientist and was never really sold into it, I would say. But when we had our son, she felt that community worship was an important thing. She got that much out of her upbringing. And I said, well, you decide what to do. I will not undermine you. I could maybe consider going along with a Jewish practice, but I'm not going to put my thumb on the scale. And so she looked into Judaism, and lo and behold, it turned out she had a Jewish soul. So she converted when my son was a year and a half or thereabouts, and he went to mikvah with her. We did have him circumcised at 8 days. Just our doctor. And then he did mikvah with her when she converted. Then the girls were born to a Jewish mother, and the family moved on from there.
Yeah, Max, if you could just explain to our audience a little bit about how this particular story sets up a Jewish legal predicament so that our audience can understand some of the next parts of the story.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so conversion really presents some special problems halachically in Jewish law when we're thinking about issues around circumcision and hatafat brit. So as we've mentioned before, on this podcast and in much of our work with Bruchim, if someone is born Jewish, then whether they're circumcised really has nothing to do with their Jewish status. But that's not the case for conversion, according to folks who are more halachically traditional. And so for many folks who are a bit more liberal, maybe some reform or other liberal communities sort of left of conservative, then there can be more flexibility sometimes around things like circumcision or hatafat brit with conversion. But if you're talking about a sort of conservative or orthodox conversion, then it's generally going to be the case that circumcision or hatafat brit is absolutely required. But part of the wrinkle is that if someone is converted after they're circumcised, then hatafat brit, according to those more halachically traditional perspectives, is a requirement because there has to be something, circumcision or hatafat brit as a substitute, associated with the conversion rather than simply the fact that someone has the state of being circumcised.
Thank you, Max. And I just want to sort of be super clear here. So because F's wife had not converted yet when they had their son, and he was circumcised in a hospital at 8 days, but in a hospital, he was technically, according to Jewish law, when he was born, not Jewish, according to most sort of, I should say, with the exception of the Reform movement, but with that exception, generally speaking, in the sort of conservative world, in the Orthodox world, he would have been considered not Jewish at the time. And despite the fact that he was circumcised, it would have been expected of him that he be converted, and that part of that conversion would have had to have been drawing a drop of blood or hatafat brit as part of the conversion.
So I think that also sets up for the next phase of the story, right? Because then you move to a community, F&G, where there was more stringent standards around these sorts of things, a conservative community in particular?
Yeah, and our son was about 8 when we moved there. The girls were 4. And to be bar mitzvah, the rabbi insisted on the hatafat brit. So our son asked us not to. And, I consulted with the bet din, and they asked an odd question about it. Why is he self-conscious? And they said, is he particularly fat? And I said, no. Odd question, I thought, but what causes somebody to be uncomfortable in these situations? Not thinking that, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old is going to want grown men touching him there. But it was insisted that to do his bar mitzvah, that had to be.
And this was over the objections of your son was presented with this information that in order to be part of the community, to be bar mitzvahed in the community, he would have to have this procedure done, and it was explained to him, and he was not into it.
Right, correct.
I was not aware of this happening at the time, having been very young, but he has told me since then that he begged for months to not have to do that.
And the rabbi, just to be clear, was insisting on it as a condition of your family being part of the community, or of him being bar mitzvahed, or all of the above?
Just for him to be bar mitzvah. Now, later on, there were kind of shifts in position that there was no reason to deny any, there were lots of mixed families in this community, and there was no reason to deny a child a Jewish education if the family wanted that. So you had all sorts of people in the school to do it. But to undergo a Jewish rite, you had to be Jewish. For the same reason, the rabbi would not attend a mixed marriage.
Yeah, so right, it does sound like the rabbi really thought that your son would only be Jewish in the eyes of halakha, as he understood it, after undergoing hatafat brit.
His interest was that nobody could deny halakhically the Judaism of his b'nai mitzvah.
I just want to linger for a second on a detail here that's just really kind of shouting out to me from the story right now, which is that they were aware, the Beit Din and the rabbi were aware that your son didn't want this, that he was actively voicing opposition to it, and they seemed baffled by that. Am I hearing that correctly?
They downplayed it, I would say that. I don't know if baffled is exactly the word, but I don't know if any 8 or 10-year-old boy would say, oh boy, I'm in for this.
It was very much minimalized. They were like, it's
Right.
it's just like a minor medical procedure with, rabbis around. And they said, it's just a dunk and a prick. That was always it's nothing. So it was very much minimized in that respect. And his perspective was not, I don't think, at all considered. And I don't know if this is relevant to note, but I believe at the time the board actually had a discussion about it, and the board of the synagogue, and determined that that was the ruling, that they would have to do that in order to have the bar mitzvah. So it wasn't just the rabbi's decision.
Yeah, there was a precedent. There was a son whose mother had converted after he was born, and basically he had to do it as well. And now, ironically, that son is still part of that congregation and did not circumcise his son. But they have since gone reform, so nobody cares.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I mean, and just building on what Ellie was saying, I mean, it's really a salient feature of this story that there was a sense that there can't be any kind of real objections, right? I mean, as we were noting, it's not likely that any 10-year-old boy would be thrilled about this. But, that being said, I think one thing that many of us would hope for is at least sensitivity to the possibility of folks, really being uncomfortable with this at a deeper level and taking that seriously, no matter what kind of the ultimate result is.
It fills me with a certain type of rage, and I try to contextualize this because it truly was a different time in the 90s. We didn't talk about bodily autonomy and stuff like that for children back then, but the idea of a room full of adults discussing this and deciding that the child's will, the child's intent isn't what mattered, but that to be a part of the community, they had to go through with this. It's very disappointing. And I didn't learn that until the past year as we were going through this family trauma.
But it was kind of funny. In some ways, I think the rabbis kind of knew what they were doing. They kind of made a point of saying, oh, we're not like the Orthodox. We don't really have to get a lot of blood, just a drop, that they can put on a Kleenex and show us. But the general procedure seemed to be, oh, he'll get over it.
And he didn't. No. He hasn't.
Spoiler alert, he hasn't.
You tried to be discreet about it, but the rabbi's sons learned, and, he got taunted.
Yeah, he was bullied.
He was kind of a gentle boy, so he was bullied everywhere, but in particular in this venue, I think it was particularly traumatizing.
We could also mention that Mom and Dad, neither of them were sold on it either. But they did want my brother to be a part of the community. So that's what they landed on. But there was resistance from them as well.
And my understanding is that the actual procedure was postponed a few years with some kind of understanding with the community that as long as, it was understood that before he was bar mitzvah, this would happen. And so it happened not when he was 8, but when he was 10. Is that right?
This is kind of a not a clear memory. I remember it first being discussed when we're at our first address before we bought our house. And my wife remembers specifically being in our house when we made the trip to go have it done.
Okay, so he was 9 or 10 years old when this happened.
9 or 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then what happened next in terms of how this became an issue in your family? How does the story move from here?
Well, he did his bar mitzvah. He did well, and seemed kind of generally pleased with being Jewish until we got onto our.
Well, after
his bar mitzvah, he didn't go to Hebrew school anymore. He was allowed to opt out, and he did.
He didn't come to synagogue either.
Didn't come to synagogue much. Didn't he come for holidays?
I mean, probably because we told him to, but.
And then proceed on past middle school into his teen years, and he had troubles. So whether, is one separated from the other, I'm not a psychiatrist, I can't tell you.
And we can't necessarily say that the issues that he struggled with in his teen years were a direct effect of the hatafat and brit. There's obviously so many factors that may have been involved there, but he was definitely struggling a lot with his mental health and acting out and depressed, and at one point a suicide attempt. And so there were a dark few years there in high school. I don't think it was clear to any of us until maybe a decade later when, as an adult, that he came out to us and said, this caused me trauma and I don't want to be around religious things anymore. He said after he was married, so that was like 7 years ago that he got married, he said that he didn't want us to pray if he was over for Shabbos dinner.
So eventually he stopped coming over for Shabbos dinner.
We did abide by that request.
Yes, we didn't do the prayers or anything.
And his wife was also not comfortable. She felt like it was like forced prayers. She's not religious at all. And so we did abide by that, stopped doing the prayers from when they were there. And eventually it kind of like would come up every few years when he would go through these cycles of anger. And he eventually asked us to stop talking about Judaism at all around him, and then our Jewish friends or anything even remotely synagogue related. When it comes up in conversation, you can just see him start to bristle, and you can like see that trauma response, what I'm now recognizing as a trauma response, was just like this, just locking up, just like tenseness, And he would often, if anything like that ever came up while he was over here, he would then shortly leave.
The precipitating event to the severance that we're still getting over, and I will toss as an aside that my wife and I did go over and visit him this week for snacks and dogs, basically to visit his dogs. And it was a reasonably comfortable visit, nothing of great depth. He's into his gadgets and things, and so pretty much light conversation. But what precipitated the severance in my wife's telling was her sister, my daughter's wedding in Tel Aviv, which she didn't go to. And then we describing some things about the vacation. One was going down to the crater, in the south. It's a geological feature, and they take you through Maktesh. That's the word. Sorry.
I knew it would come.
Accessing your hard drive when you're 70,
It's not a crater. It's a unique geological feature.
Right. So anyway, it was four-wheeling, and it was great. It was a gas. I mean, the hobby geologist, so this had picked a good excursion. So our son took from that we wanted to go four-wheeling. So he started planning trips to go four-wheeling around here, and it was just like, no, we've just been halfway around the world. We're exhausted. We're not into planning another trip. And it was shortly after that the severance in Durham occurred.
That's not why. I'll tell you my perspective.
Okay.
There was a side chat. We have a family group chat, of course, that used to have all five of us. But I had created a side chat for Mom's birthday with just the four of us. And my brother and sister, I think, didn't realize that Dad was in that chat. And so they were talking about Mom and Dad as if Dad wasn't there, and was airing some frustrations about how he wanted to travel with Mom and Dad because that was something that he enjoyed doing, and kind of airing some frustrations about how, every weekend when we were children was all about synagogue and Sunday school. We didn't really go on a lot of family vacations. And once, Dad realized he was in that chat, and he was like, what is this conversation about? Dad said something about, well, I'm sorry that we disappointed you. We did give you the opportunity to go to Camp Ramah like the girls did. And that really triggered my brother, because he was like, still after all these years, after me telling you over and over again about the trauma that this religion has caused me, you think that I would have enjoyed going to this religious summer camp experience. And so he lashed out about that. And pretty much right after that is when he went no contact with Mom and Dad. Shortly after that, he also went no contact with my sister. This was like a year and a half ago. So I was the only person for many months that he was talking to, and I've been trying to mediate as much as I can. And he's kind of gone back and forth about whether or not he is able to be low contact with the rest of the family. And that's where we are now.
That sounds really painful. I want to just take a minute to acknowledge that this is very brave of both of you to come forward and talk to us about this. And
yes, agreed.
I really appreciate it. Now that we have the facts established of the story, what kind of feelings did this bring up for you? And I want to start with F and then move to G. And we were already getting a sense that you have a slightly different positionality vis-a-vis your son and your brother. But I'd like to start with F, when you first realized that this was such a deeply traumatic event for your son. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? And how do you feel about it now?
I'm not sure when I first realized it, to be honest. I mean, in recent years, it was like, holy cow, this is really a seriously traumatizing event. There's a big part of me that just says, get over it. Now, that's not fair. I mean, a traumatizing event is a traumatizing event. How do you tell somebody to not be traumatized? You can't. I have recollections of bizarre treatment when I was a child in New York City, and the Italian kids pulling down my pants and pointing out the Jewish fonts, and how it was different. And I was, a 5-year-old kid with my pants around my ankles and them walking away. It was embarrassing, but I don't think I'm traumatized.
Are you?
Huh?
Are you traumatized by that experience?
I don't think.
Because I think we're talking about wildly different experiences.
And that could be, but basically things happen, particularly weird sexual things, to kids growing up. Now, having adults involved, our son construes as being abuse compared to things that I can remember happening to young teenagers and things like that. But at either rate, yes, I think I downplayed it quite a bit. I didn't quite appreciate the depth of the trauma.
And more recently, both Mom and Dad have been in therapy, both individually and together. And they did a therapy session with my brother as well. And I think both of them have more understanding of the depth of the trauma and what PTSD means. I think, back in the 90s, people weren't really talking about the effects of trauma.
Gee, can you say a little more as well about when you started to realize your brother's perspective and trauma that he felt from this experience?
It's kind of funny. I remember, I think the first time I realized it, he had a conversation, I think by text. He's not a caller, and he doesn't usually express himself in person. He's a very, very introverted person, but he had expressed to the family that he didn't want to have the blessings done around him on Shabbos. And I remember it was around the holidays because I was in Milwaukee visiting some of my college buddies. And I remember talking to one of my best friends and explaining it to her and explaining it to someone who is outside of the community, not a Jew. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is how we do things. And this is what happened to my brother. And so that was kind of like my first, the first time I realized that. And at that time, it was the question, well, are my parents going to accept that they can't do the blessings around him? And I was like, I don't know. This is such a big part of our lives, and now that seems like such a small ask now that we've been through so much more pain as a family and so much more struggling with this idea and much more understanding of what he went through and what that means for who he is now. Sorry.
No. Thank you so much for starting to go into that.
I really appreciate the vulnerability that you're sharing with us. It sounds like an incredibly painful family trauma, I think, is what we're sort of circling around here, is that his experience and his memory of this event from his childhood has really become this traumatic rupture in your family. Is that would you characterize it that way?
Yeah, absolutely. And to go into a little more detail, our family's always been really close, really open with each other. We've had that family chat for decades. And after mom and dad moved here a few years ago, my brother would come over almost every Sunday just to visit and chit chat. And after this falling out, that stopped happening, and that was particularly devastating. After this happened, about a year and a half ago, she was very, very depressed, more depressed than I've ever seen her. And so when I say that this was devastating for our family, that's what I mean. This isn't just like bickering.
I'm wondering if you guys can talk a little bit about how this situation has made you feel about your Jewish identity.
And I'm probably more involved than anybody else in the film. Of course, we have a daughter in Israel, but in Israel, it's odd how people are not that involved in Judaism other than being Jews. I am probably the more involved in community worship, but the key word there is community. And so I'll do our favorite venue is morning minions, short services, a little nash afterwards. I put up a sukkah. We light candles every Friday. I do bench tefillin. So by appearances, I'm a religious Jew, but I'm not. And I don't know that's ever been any different for me.
And G, how has this affected the way you see your own Jewish identity? And you're in such a unique position also, I based on what you're telling us, is you've been the go-between. So you've taken a lot of the emotional brunt of the situation. And I'm wondering how that has affected the way you see your Jewish identity.
Yeah. So, I mean, we mentioned, we were raised Jewish. We went to synagogue every Saturday and Sunday school. My sister, I have a twin sister. She and I both taught Sunday school, and we both went to Jewish summer camp. We both worked at Jewish summer camp as adults. And when I was in college, I was, very involved in the Hillel. I helped start the Jewish student organization on campus. So this was something that was very much a part of my life. And I very much valued being a part of that community. And I would definitely say that learning about the impact this has had on my brother has been a huge part of why Judaism has become less important to me. Because why would I want to be a part of a community that does that practice and allows that practice on babies anywhere, anytime, or any children? It's knowing the pain and the trauma and everything that it can cause, and having listened to the first season of your podcast and some of the other risks associated with it. It's just, why would I want to be a part? And I'm sorry, Dad, I know I probably haven't expressed that fully to you before, but there's a part of me that is just so angry, so angry that not just one adult, a group of adults sat down and said, this is the right decision without thinking about what the child actually wants. So yeah, I'm really not very religious anymore. I still think of myself as a spiritual person. I will still light the candles with Mom on Friday nights and we do the blessings here, but and of course we do Hanukkah, we have latkes every year. But beyond that, I'm really not particularly religious anymore. And I think for a faith, one of our main goals as Jews is to make more Jewish babies and bring more people into the Jewish community. So it's crazy to me that this is such a sticking point for people because it is alienating people and hurting people and making people want to turn away.
Thank you so much for really helping to bring some of this perspective and talking about your experiences. Yeah, so I wanted to ask as well a bit more about how this experience has impacted and continues to impact your relationships as a family.
My brother has said in the past that he wants nothing to do with any religion, and he doesn't want anything to do with people that would even be a part of a religion that would allow for a barbaric blood ritual on children. And so that has been his hard line for a long time is this is barbaric. I don't want anything to do with it. And I have particularly tried to push back a little bit, just be like, yes, and we can still, move forward. We can do family therapy. It is changing slowly, thanks to the work that y'all are doing and people just in general being more aware of the potential risks. And, it used to be every child in America was circumcised, but now it's starting to be much more of a conversation. Even my friends that are not Jewish that have had babies have been like, do we do that? And that is starting to change as well, and how common that is. So things change. And I've been trying to push back a little on my brother about, things change slowly and surely, and just trying to get him to be open to, more therapy. And I was honestly really surprised when he reached out and invited Mom and Dad over last week. He did not tell me he was going to do that.
I'm guessing it was a hearty suggestion from his therapist,
or his wife.
Who I was pretty impressed with. We sat down with a joint session a few months back, and my guess is that she suggested this as a follow-up, and I think it went pretty well.
But we definitely know now that the topics that are off limit and working on really being mindful and mirror about the things that we bring up when he's around.
I'm wondering if you guys could take this opportunity. Imagine, for the sake of argument, I know this for a fact, but let's just say for the sake of argument, that there are rabbis or community leaders listening to this podcast. I would really love it if you could take this opportunity to speak directly to them. What do you want them to know about this story and about your experiences with it?
My take is we don't do animal sacrifice anymore. There's a whole number of the 613 that we really are not relevant anymore. The question is, you're always afraid when you have a tradition-based religion of throwing out the baby with the bathwater, of what happens if we let this slide, if we let that slide, Fiddler on the Roof, one by one, his daughters marrying first one of their choice and then somebody else and then a Gentile. So bit by bit, you worry about how much is going to slip away until there's nothing of you left. And does this really have to be one of those things? Do you really think, this little removal of flesh or the drop of blood has much to do with anything? And the answer to that question, I think, to me, is resoundingly no.
I would say that, we all know halakha changes. It's just humans interpreting what they think God meant. And there's a lot of mitzvot we aren't able to do and that we've decided are no longer ethical. And being strongly in camp too.
Call back to season 1. Very nice.
Ethics and halakha can conflict, and ethics should trump. And I think you can argue that abiding by the law of the land, quote unquote, means also abiding by modern ethical standards. And this is really something that we have to move forward from and find another way to fulfill that mitzvah spiritually without the physical component. Or wait until the child is an adult and they can decide for themselves.
And G, I mean, one of the things that you mentioned a bit ago that I really appreciated is also that many of us really do have better language and sort of concepts for thinking through some of these issues than we did a few decades ago. And of course, that's work that Bruchim is involved with, and trying to promote helping folks think through these issues. But it's something that a lot of people are really going through in a lot of different ways, all over the country and the globe.
Yeah, I hope that this changes, because the risk is too great. It truly is. And I don't think we should be able to decide for another human what their body looks like. And Jews want more Jewish babies. Jews want more people in the community. But what happened in our case is that it alienated my brother from the community, and he ended up not being Jewish. So you really cannot take a tiny human, a baby, and say you're going to be Jewish. It's not up to you. It's up to their soul and whatever they determine in their life. So performing that mitzvah on them, not knowing what they're going to be as adults, is really not a choice that we should have.
I'll toss in my family history, there was one of my father's cousins, still alive, who married a Zoroastrian. And the way the story was told to us, that he was circumcised, and they kind of laughed it off when he asked her mother, "You want to see?" But I learned from visiting with her in a recent year that basically they wanted him to do the hatafat. And even my grandmother's sister said, bullshit. But she said, no, we're not going to do that. So there was never an official conversion. It's so unnecessary.
And there's any number of reasons why someone can be traumatized, but I think that we should be, and halakhically, we should be doing our best to do no harm, right?
Yeah, no, and one of the things that, just really sticks with me about this story is that it's so hard to know what kinds of things affect different people, what sorts of things, might be or be interpreted as harms. And as this story shows, it can also take a really, really long time for us to know and to have a sense of what experiences are like for people. So, it's just a reason that we really need to be careful and to kind of understand what we're doing. And of course, we're not trying to kind of say anything general about this practice here, but rather just that we need to be sensitive and be careful.
Yeah, but I also want to validate G's anger.
Oh, for sure.
When I hear that the rabbi and the board actually knew that the boy himself was not wanting this to happen and was fearful of it, and that just didn't come into the calculus, that just wasn't taken into account at all, I get angry too. I got to be honest. It makes me angry to think about that, to think that was just not even considered.
It's like, who is the mitzvah for? Is it for the child or for these other adults in the community?
Yeah, that's such a great point.
And I think that the child's intent is more important when they're old enough to think about it, like my brother was. But even when they're babies, you don't know what they're going to want when they're an adult. So, and
I mean, even as I try in like, with the better angels of my nature to sort of be dan lekav zchut and to sort of give them the benefit of the doubt and say they were trying to do something that they thought was like a really important line for Jewish identity, still I get angry that it doesn't seem that his needs or his feelings were a factor in the decision making for the community, for the rabbi. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for your bravery in your willingness to share your story and your trauma with us here. I know it wasn't easy, and I really appreciate it. I think it will make a big difference for people to hear this and to understand that this isn't something that you can just dismiss. The trauma is actually real. So thank you so much for sharing vulnerably with us today.
Thank you so much for the work y'all are doing and for having us on.
Yeah, no, I absolutely want to second what Eli said. Thank you so much.
Next time on the Bruchim podcast.
The first conversation we had about it, my father apologized to me for not having me circumcised, and that he was sorry that I had to go through this now, and that if he had known this, he would have had me circumcised. But he was apologetic, and I stopped him and I said, I was able to consciously make a decision and go through this very spiritual process. I feel like most brises are done like what's the plural of bris? Like, is it bri or
Britot.
britot? Okay. The child isn't experiencing any of the spirituality of any of the God, of any of the anything beyond its connection to pain. The people around them are in some way, and there's some ritualistic things that are being done. But I was able to make a decision on my own and have this very extreme religious experience. And it changed. It did what it's supposed to do. It solidified my contract with God.
Thank you for listening to the Bruchim podcast. If you like what you've heard, please go on over to our website, bruchim.online. That's BRUCHIM.online, and consider supporting our organization. We're a 501c3, so all donations are tax deductible. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email us at info@bruchim.online. Lehitraot!